24th of October, it's another pleasant autumn day, really starting to feel like autumn now, and this is one of our latest apples that we pick, Sturmer Pippin, and just coming off reasonably easily. There are some cells, I forget the name of them, but they're sort of cutting cells or separation cells which grow in and sort of snick this make a cut, as it were. Yeah, these are just coming off in my hand nicely. A little bit of moisture on them, it doesn't do any harm. Pick them into store. I'm selecting only pretty much perfect apples today, and we don't always do as well as we have done now with these. Is that that's just very minor cosmetic damage, that's okay. We don't always do as well with these apples as we have done. Yeah, these are coming off nicely, definitely need to be picked. Sturmer Pippin, nothing to do with Die Sturmer, which was a World War II Nazi publication. Nothing to do with that at all, but named after a village in East Anglia. I can't remember if it was in Essex or Suffolk, I can't remember. The village of Sturmer, from which this variety originates, and it's a very long keeping apple, it's a very hard apple, it's very high in vitamin C, and you can keep it if they're very well ripened, good sound wholesome fruit, and they're stored carefully. You might even be able to keep them until May the following year. These have ripened very well, I'm really pleased. These are a greenish apple, and when they're properly ripe they've got this lovely orange flush, which I think is very attractive. I recently had a discussion with a friend on the channel here about Granny Smith, which I don't like, but he says in California Granny Smith actually develop a really good flavour. I'd love to be able to test that one day. Although even so, he said that you know, they don't grow. The ones that they sell in the shops aren't quite so good. But this is a long-keeping apple. It doesn't always ripen well. I've described it as having similar texture to Granny Smith, but much better flavour. Certainly better flavour than all the Granny Smiths I've ever tasted. It really probably wants a slightly warmer, a longer, sunnier summer than we always get here in Britain. It's one of those apples that won't really do well every year. As folks know, we had a very hot, dry summer, and that brings me to an interesting point about the selection of apples, because of course these have been selected by our ancestors down the years, and in East Anglia it's the driest part of Britain because our prevailing winds come from the west, and this, by the way, it's not bird dropping, this is a little bit of the calcium based, it just wipes off easy, it's not a problem. That's a calcium based foliar feed that we spray. You often see a little bit of it. Just wipe that off. So I'm changing the subject. I've got schizophrenia in my family, and I've got quite a jumpy brain, but sorry, that's the way it goes. I don't do scripts, as you know. Anyhow, Sturmer Pippin is a very long keeping apple. It doesn't ripen perfectly every year, and our ancestors, who obviously selected this variety in East Anglia, thought, hey, this grows quite well around here. East Anglia, highest level of sunshine anywhere in the UK, because the prevailing wind bringing the rain tends to come from the west, so it's quite a dry place there, and this probably goes quite well there. It's not growing much in Britain anymore. It does more reliably well, does Sturmer Pippin, in another climate. Incidentally, we do get a bit of this sort of green splash, I call it. I think it's an algae. I'm not sure. It's perfectly harmless. It's purely skin deep. But you know, I couldn't offer this for sale. People probably wouldn't buy it unless you had a year when all the apples were like it, and we did a few years ago. in which case, you know, certainly our customers were more willing to accept that. Anyway, we used to get these. We used to see these coming from Tasmania, island of Australia, and they would survive a long sea journey better than any apples. A very hard apple. Sturmer Pippin is a little bit susceptible to scab. Often it will set a very large number of fruit and so need thinning to get a good size. I would not advise this as an apple for a wet climate. I would not consider planting this west of Bristol, and I would be very cautious about advising anyone to consider planting Sturmer Pippin if you are absolutely unwilling to consider giving your trees a little bit of fungicide. This can be quite apt, quite prone to fungus. But you know, if you live in a hotter climate than England, you know, this would be a great apple to grow in the south of France, for example, or Italy. And it does get a very good flavour when it's properly ripened. So Sturmer Pippin, I'm not sure I'd say it was one of my top 10 apples, but out of the choice of very long keeping apples, certainly one of my top 5. Anyway, that's all I've got to say really about Sturmer Pippin. I bet you go and do some work.